Hello to all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched, Bots, and Share Shots. I am your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me tonight for episode 100, he is the reigning and defending now tag team champion. He is TikTok creator extraordinaire. He is Ruthless Michael Wayne. Michael, thanks for coming on and chatting about some wrestling with me, brother. How are you?
I'm great. I've seriously I honestly look forward to every single interview and podcast and that sort of thing I do. So I'm thoroughly excited to actually be here. I promise.
I'm excited for this conversation, man. When I talked to you about it initially, I was like, episode of 100, it's a big deal for everything. And I was
Yeah.
like, I had to find that perfect story. And we're going to get there because we're going to kind of talk about what you've been doing on TikTok and stuff along with it when we get there. But I was like, this is it, man. This is my fucking story. So I was
Yeah,
like,
it's awesome. First off, congratulations! 100 episodes of anything is
thank you.
amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So it's super cool.
Well, here we go. We always start though, okay? Everything kind of has a beginning and an end, just like in the wrestling ring. Mine, I always
Yep.
say we call it the origin story. It's that
Yep.
early exposure. I grew up
Yep.
in Nashville, late '80s, early '90s. I always say I was there at the very tail end of the NWA days, beginning
Yep.
of WCW. What did you grow up watching?
So I was not super far from you. I was born in Virginia, right on the East Coast. I was like half an hour from the beach, half an hour from North Carolina. So kind of the same thing. I was Crockett territory. I had no idea what it was though. I had not a clue. Didn't go to shows or anything like that. Watched it on television though. Saturday morning wrestling. The Rockers are what got me. The colors, they were young, high flying, that sort of thing, and it caught me. I was like, these guys are super cool. They're amazing. And I don't remember anybody in my family really being a big wrestling fan. I've been told I think my grandfather was, but I don't have any memory of him at all. So it was just one of those things. I must have just started watching it out of the blue one day and just kind of never stopped. Just ran with it. Um, and it only snowballed. It only ever got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like a lot of people do.
So eventually, you're a fan. You're watching as much as you can. You're trying to get there.
Yep.
Eventually, you had to have that conversation with yourself, though. You were like, I want to be a pro wrestler. I want to do this.
Yep.
Let's kind of dive into that process, deciding how to become a pro wrestler, getting into training, deciding on a
Yep.
school. How did you go about that?
So I decided I wanted to be a wrestler when I was like 9 years old. Do you remember the minis that the WWF used to do?
Yes.
It was like a Vader mini. There was a Gold Dust, all those whatever. I was about the same size as those guys. I was like, I could do this. They should give me a call and I could go do this kind of thing. And it was literally like the first time I ever thought I would like to do this. And uh, I was at my local card shop one night, or I shouldn't say one night. It was like a Saturday afternoon, and I hear a bump in a ring. It's a very distinct sound. If you've ever watched wrestling, you just kind of anytime you hear it. And I look on the other side of the counter, and it's the first time I'd ever seen something that wasn't WWF, WCW, or ECW, and it was AJ Styles, Chris Sabin, and Petey Williams in a three-way in super old school TNA, and
That's a
I literally
fantastic
got
trio.
right. Yeah, it's like the creme de la creme of that company, especially at that time, and I literally looked just in time to see my first Canadian destroyer and the end of the match. So it was literally last 10, 15 seconds. And I was like, what in God's name was that? It was the first time I realized there was wrestling outside of the big three, And I then found out very quickly after that they actually did shows, half an hour north of me in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Um, so in combination of first starting to do that, I did what every other kid does that just wants to be a pro wrestler in high school. I backyard wrestled with a bunch of friends. It's sadly one of those super taboo things to even admit in professional wrestling, but it is what it is. How many NFL players do you think play tackle football?
In their
Kind of liken it
backyard,
to the
right?
same thing. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. They weren't wearing pads. You think they knew proper, tackling, etiquette, and skills? No, none of them did, and we definitely did not know either. But so I go to my first show. Is at a place called the Ningyi Hall in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and the reason we went, the main event had Raven in it, and a before he was famous Ken Anderson, go on to be Ken Kennedy. And they had a Ravens rules match at the very end of the night, and it was just the coolest thing in the world to like A, see somebody that I used to watch on TV, and B, see him wrestling a guy that is from 3 minutes north of where I live was just even cooler. Uh, Went to a couple of those shows over like probably a span of 2 or 3 years, and got approached by somebody. Well, I approached them really, and they came and talked to me about it after the fact. But it was, hey brother, you're a big guy. You ever thought of coming and training? And I was like, yes. Like there was no doubt in my mind. Is like, it was just one of those like random ins. I had no idea what a wrestling school was. I didn't know how to even find one. This is like 2006, so Google's not quite the juggernaut it is today. Yahoo is still trying to be the search engine of choice. So
The
it
good old
wasn't a thing.
days.
Exactly. Yeah, it just wasn't a thing. So to have that invite of, hey, you want to come train? It was just like this could not have happened. At a better time in my life. Still like fresh out of high school. I have no real responsibilities in the world yet. It's like, let's do this. As far as being a schools might be a really loose way to put it. It was more of a show up to every show, set up the ring, set up the entrance, set up chairs, get your butt kicked for an hour, uh, go eat something, come back, do security or whatever for the show, and then the exact opposite: take everything down, put everything away, get to the after party way after everybody else, and smell like absolute crap the entire time. But paying dues and whatnot. But did that for probably a year and a half, 2 years, give or take. A few other things here and there, like some of us rookies would beg the owner to do like more things. Like, can we just literally set up the ring wherever it's parked, train and then, put it away kind of thing. And we did that a few times over a summer. Wrestling in an outside sucks, but we didn't care. It was reps. We were just getting reps as, what we really needed. So that's pretty much how I got into it. It was literally just hey brother, you want to train? Yes. Yes, I do.
So speaking on paying dues, in my intro, I said I'm a chef by trade and a mark by choice. More than just a gimmick and a catchy phrase. I was an executive chef for 15 years. That was my previous life, so to speak. Paying dues. When we say things like that, especially in a kitchen, like you go in, you show up early, you're on time is late, and late is unexcusable.
Yeah.
Like you hear
Oh,
all
yeah.
of these things, and I see a lot of the parallels.
Yep.
People liken it to that blue collar lifestyle without being a tradesman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Very much so.
Looking at that point in your career, that you've been through training, you're getting ready to start breaking in. How important was it to you to pay your dues, to be there to set up that ring, to be a part of that crew, and kind of see the inner workings of the machine that is a pro wrestling show? How important was that
Well,
overall to you?
very early, Michael Wayne was very lucky that I just kind of understood some things without having to actually learn them. I was already a very much mouth shut, ears open kind of learner. I always just kind of watched everybody and surveyed, and hey, that guy messed up. I'm not going to do that. They praise that guy. I'm going to be doing that kind of stuff. So I was very lucky that I was already seen as a very respectful guy, a hardworking guy, that sort of thing. And the guys that worked harder, the ones that got the chances. It's and I'm sure this is something you could probably like attest to, like in the restaurant business. The guy that's at the top isn't always the best skilled person in the building. They probably know the most because they've got time on them. That doesn't mean they're the best. You've got to work your way up to be there. Uh, John Cena didn't exactly start at the top of the card. When he got to the top of the card, he wasn't the best wrestler in the company, but he was still the top, and you had to respect that. So it came. The wrestling itself, I wouldn't say came super easy because it's a whole nother ball game having to learn how to wrestle. But it came. Everything else, like outside of the ring, came very easy because I was just I knew how to pay attention. I knew when to shut my mouth. I knew when to open my mouth, and I knew I had a good work ethic, so it was easy.
looking at some of that, you've got that very historic, rich Midwest territory when it comes to the
Mhm.
Indies, from that Ohio, Indiana up into Wisconsin,
Yep.
all of that right there, especially that Michigan area. There's a ton of that
Yeah.
that sweep in that Midwest, tons of historic pro wrestling. You've cut your teeth in a lot of the indie territories that came up through that area, Wisconsin Pro now. Looking at your work and the territory scene then versus in 2023, what's some of the biggest territory differences you see in that Midwest
Ooh.
territory in just the, what, 2014 range, 2013 range? So we're
Mhm.
looking at a decade now. What's the biggest
Yeah.
territory difference in a decade?
I even more so than just the Midwest. I get this a lot. A lot of us from even just Wisconsin get this particular thing a lot, and I just heard it really for the first time maybe 6 months ago. Uh, I can't remember who I was even wrestling at the time, but match gets done. We get to the back, and the guy was like, "Do you hate me or something?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Dude, like just lit me up." I was like, "I know more than anybody else I would have normally um, and there were two or three other guys that came back that show and said the exact same thing to other people, and I'm like, it's weird, like all in the same night. This is really awkward. And I realized everybody that was doing the complaining, I say complaining, but it's more of a observation, I guess. The people making those observations were not trained in the state of Wisconsin. Everybody that was being complained about was trained in the state of Wisconsin. Something about it, I don't know what it is. We're just a little more, we'll say snug. Snug's a nice way to put it, which is a very old school mentality kind of thing. This was AWA territory. Vern Gagne didn't let you do stuff if it didn't look real. So I think that's just kind of generation to generation has stuck with this area. Um, Not to mention, we have literally the biggest and I'll argue the best wrestling city in the world in Chicago, Illinois. It's easily the highest concentration of wrestling companies in the world. Some of the highest quality wrestling you'll ever see comes out of that city. If you want to be a professional wrestler, there's really no better place to move to travel to learn in. Um, and I mean, we all travel real well. Like I never really done the math on it or figured it out, but I would bet there's a fairly high share of wrestlers on the big stage that are from this area. Even with outside of Chicago having very small population in comparison to like the East Coast, West Coast, the South in general. Uh, I would argue that we're probably some of the richest, most talented in the country, if not the world.
So you brought up Vern Gagne. That's one of those historic wrestling families just about everywhere, and I've got a
Yeah.
soft spot in my heart for territories. Um,
Hmm.
Being in Nashville, like I said, Memphis is right here, so Lawler's and
Yep.
Jarrett's, JCP's right there in my backyard.
Yeah.
Those fans from the '80s in Memphis and JCP, they had a very distinct taste in what they had the preference of. And I know the
Hmm.
AWA fans were accredited for that same thing being in Gagne's territory. Do you feel
Yeah.
like the indie fans in the Midwest now that would be in that, the remnants of the AWA, do they still carry that kind of feel? Like, do they want a specific type of wrestling? I say that a lot, but do you
I
understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, no, I caught exactly what you're saying. I Most shows that I'm even on nowadays, instead of being a we are this kind of show, they touch everybody. Like they very purposefully, match number one, I need you guys, super up and hype, and I need, quick high flying, that sort of thing. Match two, we're going to slow it down a little bit. I need that more map based, this, that. Coming out of intermission, we need that cool hot tag match to, bring them back up. So it's that roller coaster effect. So there is no, like, I've never been on a show that was just we're all this. Every promoter is very let's give them everything. Not everyone likes just chocolate, just vanilla, just strawberry. Let's give them Neapolitan. So it's very broad like that. I I almost sympathize for the guys that do only like that one niche wrestling because then it just kind of turns you off to watching so much other good stuff. I've always been very, you should try to watch as much as possible. I just started myself trying to watch a lot more Mexican wrestling, AAA, CMLL. Really hard for me to get my American wrestling brain to watch it because it's so different. And what I'm
Luchador,
used
man, they're totally different world, bro.
a whole different ball game. When I finally figured out that even the referees were face or heel, I was like, they are on a different level. Like they are just, it's something else there. The referees actually have characters, like all of them. All of them do. Um, I've always watched a fair amount of Japanese wrestling. So I've been trying to just again piece together watching all of this, so I can have that well-rounded mentality, but still stay very based in my roots, if that makes sense.
Throughout your career, we're going to stick in the Midwest for just a second longer. You've had a chance to work with Now. You're currently one of the you're
Yes.
one half of the tag
Yep.
champions. You've worked with them throughout your entire career. So looking at the decade long of who Michael Wayne is, what is it like seeing the evolution of a promotion as you grow as a person? The promotions continued to grow alongside you. How's that been?
Yeah. So what's really cool for Now in general, Now was literally a company started by a bunch of guys that were not getting booked anywhere. It was literally the island of misfit toys for professional wrestling. And a bunch of the guys, I don't know where they got this literal wooden wrestling ring and just started a company.
That's awesome.
They found a bar that let them set it up and they just started running shows. I had basically taken a break for a while and was invited by a couple of the guys. Hey, we know you used to wrestle. You live in the area. You should come to the show. And it just kind of coincided with me starting back with Wisconsin Professional Wrestling and started wrestling with them again, or started wrestling with Now. And it's literally what it was. It was a bunch of guys that weren't getting booked anywhere. And if you look at our original roster, so many of the guys went on to do, WWE, AEW, Impact, you name it, they've done it kind of thing. And it's what we still do. The roster's literally like 7 or 8 of us that have been around for quite a long time. And then it's, are you young? Are you fresh? Do you want to come try something new? We've got this company. Come, what do you want to do? It's a great place to try something. We don't take ourselves very serious. We actually had Sabu on probably 6 to 9 months ago, somewhere in there, and I was sitting next to him during a match where 2 guys were being controlled on the outside of the ring by Nintendo controllers. And the finish came when somebody threw a large plush Eevee in the ring. And Sabu turned and looked at me and he's like, "You guys are just Chikara again, aren't you?" And I was like, that's a really good way to put it, actually. It's because it's what we are. It's, it's every part of entertainment you can possibly be. And people are trying different things wrestling wise. So it's just a great place to like come and hone your craft. It's single A baseball, like we know where we are and it's fine. But to watch guys that have come through to come and, apply their craft and try something new so they can learn something new is phenomenal. I've helped run it literally since the day I got there. It's such a fun place to be. And it just holds such a special place in my heart.
This is the part of the conversation we're going to get to it. I'm going to ask you a question, but I want you to kind of tell the story as if the people in the chat and the people listening to the episode don't know your story. Okay? So
yep.
I want you to start the day of. And I'm being intentionally vague. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
The people listening don't. I want you to start day of for me. Let's kind of start the day leading up to what happened, and I want you to start us there, because that's going to be the next bridge of this conversation. Let's start there. Let's day of.
Gotcha. So I have a show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, for a company called ACW. It's owned and operated by Dylan Postel, Hornswoggle, if you guys don't know his real name. It's the company name is literally the company that trained him and, where he got his big break before he got to the WWE. So it held a special place in his heart. So he, bought the name of the company and that's what he runs. He had a training academy, which was amazing. They put out some of the best talent in the state currently. And his first class, I want to say it was his first class still, had a kid named Mike Hickey. Now his working name is Randy Fitzsimmons. Just over the top personality wise. He's one of those guys that at an after party he can be a bear because he just is always on. Just one of those guys. But had just graduated from the academy maybe 3-4 months before that. I'd worked with him his first couple matches, and we were then having this match that night. Uh, we one of the bigger things, talking about territories before, is Ric Flair used to say he had, I think it was like 8 different matches that he would choose. Tonight we're doing match 1. Tomorrow night I'm going to do match 7. This one I'm going to do match 8. And he like kind of had it organized so that he never put on the same match twice in the same area, that kind of thing. Because you can only go 60 minutes constantly in so many different ways, really. But what me and Fitzsimmons decided to do is the match that we'd had maybe a month or so before, we were going to do the exact same match. So it's kind of like riding a bike for him. He's still very new. He's still cutting his teeth, and he's still learning. So I wanted to keep him comfortable, keep him calm, cool, collected, that sort of thing. As far as the actual day goes, it was business as usual. Show up, set up, work with the guys that want to work, go talk to Randy, see what the booker wants, that sort of thing. And, we were off. It was literally just a run of the mill,
just a regular
normal,
show.
Day. Yeah. Even after what happened, the show just was normal, like 100%. I've watched the DVD of it now, and it's just, not to say they acted like it didn't happen, but it's show must go on. So, it went on. So during the match, me and Randy are, going about. I'm this big monstrous heel. Randy's like, 6-7 inches shorter than me. I outweigh him by 100 pounds. So you can kind of just put that into perspective. So I'm just throwing him around and doing this and doing that. And finally, part of the match comes called the double down. If you know, cool. If you don't know, something happens where the, babyface hits a real quick move and both guys are just laying for a few seconds. Real traditionally, like, double clothesline, that sort of thing. But Randy goes to, he puts his arm around my head and hooks a DDT and goes back. And I sell it. I do it the exact same way I've always done it. If you've ever seen Kane sell a DDT, that's the exact same way I've always sold it. Down on one knee, arm forward, whatnot. I'm still not even exactly sure what happened, what went wrong. It was just, it had to have been just a series of just every little thing that could have went wrong did go wrong for it. But I hit my forehead, like just square my forehead, just down on the mat, and turned over and laid down. And it caught me for a second because I didn't feel like I had a concussion. I would later find out I did. But I've had stingers before, and the stingers, like when your fingers and your toes start that waking up from being asleep feeling. It's super uncomfortable. It's not fun. And I'm laying there, and I'm just like sprayed out like a starfish, and the referee comes over and he grabs my hand to see if I'm okay. And I was like, tell Randy the match is over, I'm done, or I'm hurt. That's what I said to him. So he goes, he tells Randy. Randy rolls over and he pins me. Ref counts 1, 2. Even the ref was just confused by it. Counts of 3. Referee calls for the bell, whatnot. Randy rolls out of the ring, lifts his hands quick, and like bolts because he's like, he's hurt. I'm not doing anything. And I'm still just laying there, And he finally, if you've ever seen a referee throw up an X, it means someone's actually hurt. So he throws that up, and one of the guys' wife's, actually my tag team partner's wife is a nurse, and then one of the other boys' his dad's a paramedic. I remember them jumping in the ring. One of the other referees, TJ, jumps in the ring, and then one of the bookers, Weimer, jumps in the ring. And they're, hey, can you feel your fingers? Can you feel your toes? Can you wiggle them? Can you move them? Does your neck hurt? Anything like that? I'm like, no, it's just I've got a stinger. My hands, they're tingling. My toes are tingling. I'm fine. I'm just, wiggling, doing everything they need me to. And they're like, okay, we're going to call an ambulance. And I was like, you can go ahead and cancel that. That's 0% chance happening. I'm not. You couldn't if you paid me. And like, no, seriously, it was like, no, it's not happening. Like, it's just not. You can call them. I'm not going. And I started rolling. And my friend's wife is like, you need to stop. You need to stop right now. And I was like, if you want to try and stop me, Mickey, you can try and stop me. And I just rolled to the apron. And I get to the apron, and I swing my legs off, and I catch myself on the apron. I'm standing there, and I want to say both referees like tried to go under my arms, like help me, kind of thing. And I'm like mentally, I'm like, I'm playing the tough guy card. They're not carrying me out of this building. It's just not happening. So I like literally pushed them away and like as slow as I could possibly walk, like walked up the entrance ramp, turned around, booed a little bit, and walked to the back. I get to the curtain and I walk like just past the curtain to where nobody can see me. The curtain closes behind me, and I just kind of fell. And I was like, okay, I'll consider going to the hospital now. Like that's what finally was like, okay, I think I'm gonna go. Like this might be a little more, might be a little less, I should go. And they're like, okay, we're gonna call an ambulance. I was like, no, again, it's not happening. I will jump in my truck and I will drive myself. And they're like, no, like no. Magically, my mother has gone to like 3 of my shows ever, and she hadn't been to one in probably 6 years. This is the one she comes to. So she drives me to the emergency room at like, it's probably 9 o'clock at night, give or take. We get to the emergency room. I still have all my gear on. Like I hadn't taken any of it off. I still had wrist tape on, for God's sakes. I get in the emergency room. Hey, landed on my forehead. I've got some, numbness, tingling. Need to be seen. They're like, okay. Luckily there was nobody there, so I like almost literally walked right into the back into a room. They check my vitals. I'm moving around just fine. And again, I still had numbness, but the tingling was gone. And I was like, okay, I'm again, it's just stinger. I'm gonna be fine. The doctor comes in, finally looks at me. He's like, we're gonna order a X-ray. We're gonna order a CT scan just to make sure everything's fine. You walked in here. You said you're starting to already feel better. You should be fine. So this nurse comes to get me, who is like 5 foot, 73 pounds. And we're walking down the hallway and we do these x-rays and we come walking back. And I looked at her and I was like, how tough would it look if I'm just like walking around right now and like my neck is broken? Like just threw it out there like as a joke. And she just got super serious. She's, older lady, probably in her 60s, maybe 70s. And she's like, that would make you look pretty tough now, wouldn't it? And then just kept walking. Like, that was it. So
she no-sold the fuck out of you, dude.
She just no-sold it completely. Just did not care. But I get back in the room and my mom's in there. Or I went and did the CT scan first and then went back to the room. We were walking from the X-ray to the CT when that happened. But get back in the room, and I was in there maybe 5 minutes, and a different doctor pokes his head in. He's like, hey, I just looked at your X-ray. I didn't see anything wrong. I can't imagine anything else is going to come up on the CT scan. You're probably going to leave in like an hour. We're going to tell you to, watch concussion protocols, all that sort of stuff. I was like, okay, that's fine. And no sooner that he left the room, that same nurse comes walking in the room, and she's holding a neck collar. And she just goes, do not move your head. You broke your neck. And she's just moving at like a negative 1 mile an hour. And I just stopped moving. And I was like,
what?
Okay. Sounds good. So I just stayed there. And she put the collar on me and this, that, and the other. She laid the bed completely, even and whatnot. My actual doctor comes back in, and the first thing I said is, I want to see that other doctor again. He would not come back. Very rightfully so, he did not come back. But the doctor is like, okay, so I've got bad news and then even worse news. I was like, I've got a broken neck. Like, how does it get
What's worse than that?
Exactly. Like, what could be worse than a broken neck, And he goes, well, the bad news is, and you already know, you broke your neck. I was like, yes, I know that. He's like, well, the piece of it that broke, like it broke top to bottom, but part of it on the inside, it actually chipped off and got between my C6 and my spinal cord. So that's what all that tingling was still. It was pressing on the nerves that controlled my hands and feet. And I was like, okay, yeah, that is worse. He's like, that's not the worst part. I was like, what's worse than
what's
that?
next than that?
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, you tore the artery inside of your C6. And I was like, so I'm bleeding? He's like, no, you're not bleeding. You're not bleeding. As bad as it went, it could not have been better. And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds way better. He's like, no. You tore the inside third layer. It's like, okay, what does that mean? He's like, that's the tough layer. The other two are not. So we need to send you to a different hospital. Okay, cool. So they get a backboard under me. They take me up to it or, strap me down or whatever. I then take like a half an hour ride from Oshkosh, Wisconsin up to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And before I left, they had me like sign a piece of paper saying, whatever happens during this transportation, you will not hold us liable, this, that, and the other. Oh, and we're going to give you a shot so you're knocked out and you don't remember or feel any of it. And I was like, sign me up. So I'm laying in the ambulance, and the guy's like, all right, you ready to fall asleep? I was like, do it to me. And he like just takes the needle, shoves it in my leg, and I bet you it was 3 seconds and I was gone. I wake up in Green Bay at a trauma center for Advocate Aurora, and again, I'm strapped down to this board so I can just see the ceiling. The little bit I can move my eyes, I can see the walls. Room's probably 30 feet by 30 feet, and there's people constantly walking in. Nobody's coming anywhere near me. They're like going and looking at a piece of equipment over there and going to fill out something over there. Nobody's coming anywhere near me. Again, I'm just laying there, and I realized like most of my wrestling gear was now off. Like I still had, I think I still had my singlet on, but they had taken like my tape off, my knee pads, my boots, my shirt was cut off. And maybe 15 or 20 minutes after like I'd woken up, this nurse walks up to me and she's like, I'm nurse such and such. Do you know where you are? I was like, yes, I'm at the hospital in Green Bay. She's like, do you know what you did? I was like, yeah, I broke my neck, tore the artery. She's like, okay. Obviously we can't let you move right now. Can I get you anything? And one of the things wrestlers do is we usually super hydrate before a match. So we sweat a lot during a match. But the caveat to that is you then have to pee like a racehorse when the match is done. That's the way it works. So I was like, I kind of have to pee because this is probably 2.5, 3 hours after the match is over now. And she's like, okay, I can help you with that. And again, no doctors coming anywhere near me. Like not within, I couldn't reach any of them if I was able to reach at the time. And she walks in and like cuts the rest of my singlet off of me, like covers me up with a towel. It's like, oh, you're a sheet. I was like, okay, thank you. And without saying a word, just quickly moves the sheet and takes this like milk carton looking thing that she'd brought in and just, okay, you can pee now. The second she did that, everybody in that room had to have something to do with me. You need a monitor here. We need to give you a line there. We need to do this and we need to do that. And I finally was like, everyone needs to stop.
I just need to do my business, people.
Everyone needs to leave the room. I got to pee. Everyone just kind of, and they all walked out. They basically what they had to do was they injected this like dye into my blood so that if it did start bleeding out, it would change the color of my neck so they could see it. The problem is by the time that happens, it's literally minutes to be in surgery or you don't make it, that kind of thing. So I'm glad they told me about that part after the fact, like after I was already, next day kind of thing, because I'd have probably been freaking out on that table. And they came in and they, again, they were just running all these different tests and making sure that it wasn't bleeding out and, all that sort of jazz. And they asked me if I wanted to be put out. They're like, we can't let you fall asleep technically because of your concussion, but we can basically knock you out. I was like, what's the difference? They tried to explain it to me. I don't understand it. But if you go out via opioids, it's not like falling asleep. Okay, whatever. So they knocked me out. I wake up the next morning, and I literally wake up to my wife there. And I had not seen her since. And she's just, obviously, just losing her mind. And I'm now, at least I can, like, I wasn't allowed to get up at this time, but I wasn't strapped down to anything anymore. I was just laying in a bed like normal with a gown on. How I got the gown on, I don't know. How they moved me, I don't know. I'm a 300-pound big dude.
It took everybody in the room to move you.
Yeah. Can we get the janitor to bring in the forklift? But I wake up and this nurse comes in and it's really weird that I have two of the same type of story within 24 hours. But this nurse comes in and she's like, "Hi, I'm nurse such and such. Can I do anything for you?" And I was just super groggy still. So I was like, "No, I'm fine." I didn't move at all. So like, I was still just kind of in that I shouldn't move probably phase. She leaves. Me and my wife talk for a bit and explained what happened and what had been happening to me, that kind of thing. And she comes back maybe 20 minutes later. She's like, "You sure you don't need anything?" And I was like, well, "I gotta pee." Like, why again? The same story in like literally 12 hours. And she's like, "Oh, they should have put a catheter in you." I was like, "They what?" And I like lift up the blanket. I'm looking. It's like, "There's nothing." No, they didn't. And she like bolts, like just leaves the room. I was like, "I didn't show her anything, much less she's a nurse. Like, why would that have been something different?" Like half an hour, 45 minutes later, a different nurse comes in and she like brings me breakfast and does a bunch of, testing and making sure I'm still alive kind of stuff. And I was like, "By chance, where'd that other nurse go?" And she's like, "I've not a clue, actually. We haven't seen her like since she left your room." Okay, that's kind of weird. Whatever. She comes back.
You've had two
Some
medical
periods.
professionals abandon you in the last
Yeah,
24 hours, Michael.
yeah, exactly. Like, am I that like repulsive? Like, do people hate me that much? And and she comes back and she'd obviously been bawling. And she goes, "I need to apologize, Mrs. Rutherford. I read your chart before I walked in the room, and I saw that you had broken your C6, and I assumed you were paralyzed, and then you started moving." And I guess she was a very like God-fearing woman, and she's like, "I just saw a miracle," and just lost her mind and like ran away. But hospitals are very, we need to get people out of here kind of thing. I'd met with a surgeon once, Dr. Garden, who's actually the orthopedic surgeon for the Green Bay Packers up here. So it was literally like as good as it possibly could have been for a surgeon.
Top notch.
And he's like, "Hey, you shouldn't need surgery, but if you do, this is what we're gonna have to do." Ended up needing surgery, but got home, and it was literally 4 months of waiting for that artery to heal so I could have the surgery, because I had to be on enough blood thinners to put down an elephant, because if that clots in my C6, it goes all of 3 inches to my brain. I could be laying on the table and I wouldn't make it. So it was literally 4 months of you could still die while sitting in this neck brace constantly, while you're constantly in pain from this bone chip pressing on your nerves. I was given just a mountain of different painkillers that I had to take like all at once to even fall asleep for like an hour or two. So sleep didn't happen, and it was something else. It was definitely like, obviously every professional wrestler knows, every fan knows, you could get hurt. Everybody does get hurt in it in some way, shape, or form. But that 1% of 1% of 1% just never really pops in your mind, until you know it somebody it's happened to. And I've had a lot of guys tell me that they're way more safe now. They don't take nearly the risks because of what happened to me. And it was very eye-opening. It made me really not to sound super cliche, it made me appreciate every day I have, literally every day. It wasn't just a one time you almost died. It was a you almost died today for 4 months. And again, very, just incredibly eye-opening that even I walked into a hospital with a broken neck. I survived that for that long, finally had surgery, and then that's when it actually got bad, to be honest. Like, that's when it got real bad. Because of all the painkillers they had me on, I had my surgery. They give me 3 days of painkillers and then cut you off. There is no
There's not a wean
letdown
effect.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly. I if you'd asked me every day of my life before that, do you think you will ever have a drug problem, I'd have told you you're absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. But I did, and it wasn't by choice ever. It was something I needed at the time. So I went through about a month of just absolute hell, sadly trying to score. I was very fortunate that I bartended at the time. I was in professional wrestling at the time. I knew some people that robbed some people, and was able to keep it up enough so that I didn't just absolutely, fall on my face. Then did the stupidest thing I could possibly do and just took a weekend one day, or, 1 week, and just, all right, honey, I'll see you later. I've got 2 shows, and went to a hotel and just cold turkeyed it for 2 days. And it was the most pain I've ever been in my life. But again, it was real eye opening. This could never happen to me, and then it happens twice in a matter of months. But my wife and I that morning had I'd not even made the decision. We just knew, both of us, I'm never wrestling again, and I was cool with it. Like, I was comfortable. Like, I understood what happened. If this happens again, there's no second chance to that. There just isn't. You don't live from that twice, unless you're Ric Flair and you're in 2 different airplanes that crash. And I'm not Ric Flair by no means. So
we just Jagger and cockroaches, right?
Yeah, like how guys go down in a plane once, much less more than once, but and she basically, we decided that I could still help with wrestling, on screen personality, whether I do announcing or commentary. Ended up trying to be a manager, not for me. Really good at it, but it's kind of like ordering dessert and then not being able to eat it. Like, I got to look at it and stare at it, but not do it. It just wasn't for me. Helped a couple different companies like book throughout, just because I had to be there. I had to do it. And I was probably 2.5, 3 years ago now. I'm at a show, and the owner of Frontline Pro, the guy that basically got me through the 4 months, because there was, again, whole another ball game, joking around with me because my wife had come to the show, and he's like, "Hey, so Michael, when you jumping back in the ring?" And I turned around to him real quick, and I was like, "No, don't do that, Ben. Like, it's funny, but don't do that." And my wife, just as comical as could be, just puts a finger on my lips and goes, "Shh, adults are talking," and took Ben and walked away. And I was like, she's going to do this to me. I can feel it. She's going to make me wrestle again. And we like, all 3 of us sat down a couple hours after that, and it was, hey, if he comes back, we can, limit risk here. We can limit risk here. We can make sure this doesn't happen. Everybody knows. And, you don't have to, and you don't have to wrestle nearly as much as you were. At the time, I would say probably 40 to 50 match a year guy, give or take. Maybe a little bit less than that. And we decided that it was like, you get 6 a year, so you can build stories, from show to show, that kind of thing. It was only going to be 2 separate companies, not a big deal. I think I hit that 6 to 8 within the first 3 weeks of wrestling again, sadly, because something about this guy broke his neck. Every booker in the world just wants you to come. They, you need to come to us, kind of thing. And it's been really weird. It's a whole new crop of guys that I'd never got to work with before. Some of the guys, there's a few guys still around, obviously, but just, it was 5 years of guys training and busting butt, and so it was like training all over again, because I got to be with a whole brand new group of people. And it's been, again, I take nothing for granted anymore. Absolutely nothing. Every match I get, I bust my ass during it. I don't half-ass anything. I make sure I go out there with a purpose, and the purpose is to come home. So, yeah. So that's my tirade. That's the gist of most of it. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun. It's been a hell of a ride, to say the least.
Listening to your story on TikTok, that's why I was like, it needs to be heard, man. It's an amazing story. You listen to people on WWE and AEW, and you see stories like Edge and Daniel Bryan and other guys that have had similar neck injuries, and it doesn't seem as real until you meet somebody on, the indie circuit. Like, it makes it very real when you get that kind of thing. One of my questions is, looking at it from the recovery side, When you
Yep.
immediately got that notice, okay, I'm gonna have to have surgery. There's gonna be
Mhm.
recovery. You mentioned things like going through with the painkillers and having to fight through that side of it and the addiction. And
Yeah.
how did you keep yourself straight? How were you able to keep yourself going? I guess because
Yeah.
mental health is real big now. A lot of people don't like to talk about
Yep.
it, especially in wrestling. 10, 15 years ago, it would have never even been
Yeah.
spoken of. But now in 2023, we're able to talk about it. How did you do it mental
Mhm.
health wise? Were you able to push through everything?
So I can I mentioned it before. I can literally name one person. I shouldn't say one because my wife was there too, but my buddy Ben McCoy had a very I wouldn't say similar because his was way worse really. Ben was in the military. Long story short, he'd actually got shot in the face um, by a sniper when I want to say he was in Afghanistan, and was very lucky, made it out, got to come back to professional wrestling. But the second I got hurt, he like next day called me. He probably called me 3 or 4 times the next day just to see how I was. And because he knew what that being on the brink of death was like, and we were already close friends. And I the I remember one night I'd woken up in the middle of the night in the like 2 hours of sleep I got a day, and I shimmied out of my bed to go use the bathroom. And I was walking by my boys' bedroom. The door's closed. I can't even see them. And I just kind of stopped in front of their door. And I didn't think of a thing. I literally thought of absolutely nothing, but I sat down in front of their door and just started bawling my eyes out. Hadn't been thinking of them, hadn't been thinking about, being hurt other than the fact that I was in pain. And I sat there for probably 2 hours, just crying and crying and crying. And I didn't know why. And it went on for probably a week or two. And Ben, had called me one day, and I'd finally like opened up to him about it, like, "Hey, this is what's happening to me." And he's like, "You need to see a doctor. Like, you need to go see somebody." And I was like, "I just, it's the weepies." He's like, "No, man, I'm pretty sure you have PTSD." And I was like, "No." Like, I wasn't a mental health denier, but again, kind of like the addiction thing. I was like, "Not me." Again, it couldn't happen to me. That's not me. I'm dad. I'm husband. I'm the mentally strong guy. And I went to my doctor and described everything that I was going through. And he's like, "So, do you want me to recommend you a psychiatrist? What do you want me to do?" And I was like, "Well, for what?" And he's like, "You have PTSD, like full blown. Just it's about as easy as a case could get." And I called Ben as soon as I'd got out of the doctor's room. Like even before I'd left the hospital, I was like walking out of the room. I called him and just broke down, and it was um I'd figured out that it wasn't so much that like I'd be gone. It's like I'm very much not afraid of dying. I just it's not my wheelhouse. It was more the fact I was afraid that like my kids were going to have to grow up without a dad. My wife was going to have to do it all by herself. My family wasn't going to see me anymore. All the grief they would have had to go through. Um, and that's what it was. Again, it wasn't me. I've never been afraid, for myself. I've always been afraid for everybody else, and it was again real eye opening. And I chose not to go to an actual psychiatrist. Like I was just like, again, I've got to put my foot down somewhere. I wasn't letting them carry me out of that ring. I'm not going to a psychiatrist. I'm gonna figure it out myself. Like I'm gonna figure out a way to do it. And it was just Ben. Like I talked to him every day, and he'd tell me stories about what happened with him, what he was going through, and it was a lot of the same things. He's like, I wasn't afraid of myself. I was afraid of what was going to happen to my wife and 4 kids. And I honestly don't know where I'd have been without him. It was so beyond tough, and it wasn't physical. Like that's what was weird to me. I was used to being in a ring and getting punched in the face and dropped on my head and all this sort of stuff. I can deal with pain, but like this is just you know that mental health pain is just different. And it I I I kind of contradict myself because I very much do preach mental health awareness to everybody. If you think you need help, go. um I've posted on my TikTok many times. If anyone's ever, at that point in life, message me. I will give you my phone number. I will call you immediately. We will talk wrestling, something or another. We'll, we'll figure it out. I've had more than one person coincidentally take me up on it. It's one of the most cool, enriching things that I've ever done. Is be able to talk to these couple people, and it's just something I never thought I'd have to deal with, and then ended up dealing with it for months and months and months, and not so much anymore, thank God. But it's still there. Every once in a while, it kind of rears its ugly head, but for the most part, good.
So when you look at it, and you've went through the surgery now, and you went through the everything that we could to get you ready to go, you eventually climbed back in the squared circle. This is a tough question to ask, because it might be one of those. It's like a mind f. You know what I mean? Because you had to eventually get in there and take that first bump again.
Yeah.
How did that
I was
go?
lucky. I was lucky in that one of the guys, like one of the older heads in the state, Shane Hills, has a wrestling ring set up in a barn. Again, very Vern Gagne style training.
That's an old school.
Yeah, like literally on a farm. Like if he wanted you to go chase chickens in the snow, you went and chased chickens in the snow. But I asked him, I was like, "Hey, I'm possibly thinking about coming back. Can I come to the school and just bump around?" He's like, "You can come bump around whenever you want." So I literally went one day at it must have been 6 or 7 o'clock. I knew Shane wasn't there. He was at a show or something like that. And I literally broke into the barn, got into the ring, took a single bump. Like I stood there for probably 10 minutes. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Finally did it. And I literally got up and left. Like that was it. Like I just walked in, took
just
a single
one
bump, got out. Yeah, just one. I was like, can I mentally even do this? Can I do it? Can I do it? And then ended up going to a few training camps just to, again, get that rust off. What people thought I was nuts for, though, because every promoter, like when they asked me, "Hey, you gonna come wrestle for us? Who do you want to wrestle? Like, who do you want to work that's with us?" I had to have my first match back with basically my home company now that's wrestling, and my tag team partner Nathan Gust, who owns the company, was like, "Who do you want to wrestle? Like, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want Randy Fitzsimmons." And he's like, "Now." I was like, "No, yeah, I want Randy Fitzsimmons." And he's like, "I don't think he's gonna do it." I was like, "I'm gonna call him." And I'd already reiterated, because he called me the next day. He Facebooked me and all that sort of stuff too. But and he was just, "Dude, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened." I was like, it's not your fault. Like 100%. I've never once even thought of putting the fault on him. It's an accident. Whether it was your doings or my doings or just the ring's doings, it wasn't your fault. And I was almost more worried about him. Again, I wasn't worried about myself. I was worried about him because he was brand new and he broke somebody's neck. So I wanted to keep him in that mindset of positivity, like, you're okay, you're fine, keep going. Very luckily, he did. I called him and I was like, "Hey, I'm getting back into wrestling. You want to be my first match back?" And he's like, "Don't mess with me. You're messing with me, right?" And I was like, "No, dead serious. Like, I want you to be my first match back." And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "If I can have the first match back with you, I can do whatever I want. Like, I know I could get in the ring and do whatever I need to do with anybody, It was a lot like riding a bike. I definitely fell off of it a few times during that match, but eventually finally got past the finish line and everything was good to go. I outright told him, I was like, "Biggest rule, don't DDT me. Don't even think about it. Don't even
just period. No more. Just don't DDT me."
I've told everybody that is new-ish or didn't know what happened to me kind of thing. It's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you try to even remotely close to put me in a front face lock and you go backwards, I'm letting you fall down, and then I'm going to take and just drop the mightiest hammer of all time on your face. And I don't care what happens after that. You can do whatever else you want. I'll be fine. It's like, but if you even think for a second you're going to DDT me, you are cracked. But yeah, again, it was riding a bike. Got back on, and I just haven't stopped pedaling since, really.
So before the injury, you had a chance. You had a reign as a singles champion that lasted almost 800 days.
Yep.
In that Vern Gagne territory. You know,
Yeah.
those territory titles used to be huge. You had
Yep.
two very separate careers almost before the injury
Yeah.
and then coming back from it. You have a chance to hold gold now. So you held gold
Yep.
at two very different points in your career. What was it like having a
Yep.
chance getting that call that second time? And they're like, you know what, Michael? Like, you're the
It was.
guy. We're going to put the belts on you guys. Ruthless Rage going to be the tag champs.
Yeah.
Let's go with it. How was that having that chance to get that push after the injury?
It as as dirty and crass as the sounds, it was like losing my virginity for a second time. Um, you don't get to do that. Like you don't get to do something again for the first time, But that's how it felt. Like it was just like, wow, I cannot believe like it's happening again. Every kid that wants to get in professional wrestling just dreams of that, stereotypical WrestleMania moment, standing, pointing at the sign, holding up the belt in the corner, that kind of thing. I full well know I'll never get to stand and point at the sign unless it's made of like, cardboard, that sort of thing. But no matter how big or how small, any title, it literally means, hey, we trust you to go make money for us. That's literally what, holding a title is in any professional wrestling company. And to have more than one now even say, hey, we want to do that, because of, everything it's very surreal. It's something I would have never thought, as a kid that I'd, be able to do, much less be doing it at, 4 times right now, um, and it's one of those dream things. Like it's like everything I get to do from now on is just cream on top. I never thought I'd get to wrestle a single match, much less have a career that technically has lasted 17. Wow, I'm old. 17 years. Um, Never thought of that. But yeah, it's like you said, two different careers. There's pre and post, and post is going faster and better than pre did, oddly enough.
Are you having fun again? I think that's a really
God,
crucial
yes. Oh
part to
my God.
everything you do. Are you having fun with wrestling again?
100%. Getting to work with all these new kids because I have I was raised by guys that were raised by the old school, you know. So I work out a match very different than what most of these kids do. And it's finding that common ground of, okay, this is how I do this. This is how you do this. Let's meet in the middle and let's, figure this out. And it's often, a tremendous way to work because then you're learning other things. I wasn't trained the way they were. They weren't trained the way I was. So I can learn from them still and they're learning from me, and it's one day, having guys that'll come up to me hopefully and be like, hey, I remember when you showed me this. It was super amazing. Thank you. That alone is worth its weight in gold. And as uninterested I am is like in having that, like, you're the Hall of Famer of this company and you were the 27-time heavyweight champion, this, that, and the other. As much as the accolades don't matter, they still feel nice.
There's still a little bonus in there, right?
Yeah. Looks really good on cagematch.net.
Yes, it does. Those things work.
Yeah. They do.
This is
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite questions, and I think with you, you're gonna see why. Everything we've been through, starting at the very beginning, and all your stories leading us to here, though. This goes all the way back, though, day one, night one, match one. You have a chance to hop in the Wayback Machine, and you go back to that person. You're looking at rookie Michael. What advice do you give that person tonight?
Oh my God. Bet on yourself a little more. I think a lot of guys have that idea, like when they get into wrestling, I'm going to be this character, I'm going to be this name, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you learn very quickly that is not how it works whatsoever, unless you walk in and your name is Brock Lesnar, that sort of thing. You get told what to do, and you literally just kind of do whatever they tell you to. You don't make waves. You eventually figure out that, yes, you can make some ripples when you kind of can show what you're doing. And I very much did not ripple at all. I was just, you want me to do that? I gotcha. I did not care how dumb it made me look. I did not care what it was. for God's sakes, my first actual professional wrestling match, me and two other trainees dressed up as the BWO for a costume battle royal. It was remarkable. Like my looking dumb had no bounds at that point. But I kind of wish I would have started making those ripples a little earlier. I wish I'd have bet on myself a little more and kind of ran with things a little more than what they kind of gave me the chance to. So if I could have told myself anything, it's don't make waves, but make ripples.
I knew you'd have a good answer. I knew you would have a good answer for that. Based on the rest of the conversation, I was like, this man will have an answer. This is the part, though. The amazing conversation we had to come to this before we land the plane and take it home. I end it the same way every time, man. 5 random questions that have absolutely nothing to do with wrestling. You ready?
Oh, perfect. Yep.
Question number 1. I wrote these before you logged on, mind you, so I didn't know ahead of time. Number 1. Gotcha. What's your favorite piece of memorabilia, given your backdrop right now?
Definitely none of these.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. I've got 2. I'll give you 2. When I had started booking for Wisconsin Professional Wrestling, I had started doing shows in Ken Anderson's real hometown, Two Rivers, Wisconsin. And literally the venue is maybe 3 blocks away from his childhood house. And we'd started getting a pretty decent following there. And it started even to exceed the shows we were doing in Green Bay size-wise. I'd finally saved enough money so that I was able to, I'm going to bring in a name finally. I'm going to bring in a name. Who should I bring? Well, I'm even thinking. I brought in Ken. And I brought in Ken. I think I might have even brought in Hornswoggle for that same show also. I don't recall off the top of my head. But the main event was a story that we'd been building to between 2 separate guys that ended up in a hardcore Falls Count Anywhere sort of style match. And they had a table spot in the middle of it, and the table shatters or whatever. I still have a piece of the table because it was the biggest show I'd ever booked. It's actually still one of the biggest shows I'd ever booked. I want to say attendance was in the 600s, give or take. So for having booked for less than a year at that time, it was massive for me. So I've got that. And then while I was doing commissioner work for the same company, a group of fans once brought me a gift bag, and I opened it up, and they had made a custom pop vinyl of me because I used to be a super huge pop vinyl guy. And they made one of me in my what I would wear for commissioner work and whatnot. So it's just really cool that the fans took the time and money to make this for me. It's wow, that's
awesome.
Again, it's not an accolade, but it's it feels amazing. So that's probably my 2 favorite. Definitely the 2 that mean the most to me.
Question number 2. What's your favorite movie?
Jurassic Park. Always has been, always will be. I was 4 or 5 years old when it came out. My mother took me to see it, and I did not realize this until a few years ago. Do you know when Jurassic Park first released in theaters, it was rated R?
Actually,
I did not either.
Yeah. I would have never thought that. I would have had no idea looking back at it.
PG-13, nowadays PG-13 I understand. But my mom took this 4 or 5-year-old kid to a rated R movie.
I love dinosaurs now.
Yeah. I guess the kid that sold her the tickets, went and told her manager. The manager came into the theater and was like, what you bring a child to a rated R movie? My mom's like, they're fake dinosaurs. He'll know. Kind of thing. And it always has been. It always will be. People can rip on every one after that. I do not care. It'll always be my favorite movie franchise of all time. Absolutely love it.
Question number 3. What's your favorite cartoon growing up? Your go-to childhood cartoon?
Ooh. Cartoon. That's really tough, actually. I wasn't a big cartoon kid. I was a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger.
Okay, there you go. I was going to say, then what was your go-to your kid show then?
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was my jam as a kid. Every morning, we would reenact that morning's boss battle, in kindergarten, that kind of thing. I wouldn't say sadly, but I still definitely watch all of it. Doesn't matter how bad it is. I will still watch it till the end.
Question number 4. It's an either or. You're going to take tacos or burgers?
Oh, I'm gonna say tacos. Uh, I love pretty much ethnic food, anything, whether it be Mexican, Asian, Jamaican, you name it. I absolutely love it. And the best thing about tacos is if you just put another tortilla on your plate, you have taco number 2. So, got to go that way.
Bingo. Question number 5. Do you think a hot dog's a sandwich?
No, it is not. Dear, I have fought with many a people over this, as a matter of fact, in at least one of my wrestling chats. Okay. Sandwiches have 2 pieces of bread. A hot dog is 1 piece of bread. Okay. If me and you had Andre the Giant between us and we both put our arms around him, what are we doing to him? We are sandwiching him. Okay. If it's just me going up to Andre the Giant trying to do the same thing, what am I doing to him? I'm hugging him. I am not sandwiching him. You sandwich something between 2 things, not just one.
The chat went off. They've been quietly listening to us this whole time. And
know, right?
people, you're wrong. And then Al says, what about a sub sandwich? And that was going to be my go-to. What about a submarine sandwich?
Okay, Subways, I'll give you a little different.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a leeway there.
Traditional, you look at if you look at Subway sandwiches, I'll raise you this one. You've seen Happy Gilmore, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Have you ever seen the cold cut combo that he hits off the tee? It's got the old school V cut. You know what that means?
Yeah.
There's a bottom piece of bread and a top piece of bread. 2 pieces of bread. The fact that Jared Fogle had to go and ruin it, and now there's only 1 piece of bread, is not my fault.
Come full circle. All right, Michael. Yeah. This is everybody's absolute favorite part of the conversation because I shut the hell up. You get to plug yourself, put yourself over, tell everybody where to find you, your socials, anything that you have coming up and you want to tell us about.
So you can find me on Facebook. My shoot name, Michael Wayne Rutherford. I add pretty much anybody that adds me. And then I've got a pro wrestling tease. Literally just search Ruthless Michael Wayne. I'm the only one that shows up. Or my TikTok is hold on, right here. The name right here, _Michael_Wayne, which is where most of my content comes out of. It's how you found me. I do lives quite often on there. I'm still posting my story, the whole Broken Neck Diaries, which has been an absolute roller coaster to do, and it's only going to get a lot worse from where I'm at now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Find me, follow me. I'm not that D-bag that just sits back and watches people talk to him. I talk back to pretty much everybody I possibly can. So yeah, appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it.
Michael, man, I really appreciate you coming on and stopping by. Tell us a little bit about your story and chatting about some wrestling with us, brother.
No, thank you. Thank you.
For Ruthless Michael Wayne, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.